Good morning, everyone. My name is Mason Benning. I'm an MD, MBA in the program, so I'd like to start with a little excerpt from my experiences in medical school. Imagine yourself at 7:30 a.m. going to school on the Metro Rail on one of these cold and rainy mornings like we had last week. You're sleep deprived, just trying to survive the beginning of the day, but once you get to class, you're greeted with this. Turns out medical school lecturers love scientific articles, and while most are good at extracting key information from them, others are not. Examples like this might be copied and pasted directly into the PowerPoint slides, and then it just becomes a game of following the laser pointer to see exactly what they're trying to focus on. Even if you were able to take the time to understand what was on the slide, you might end up missing what the speaker said anyway. With this initial example in mind, our brief presentation today is going to be about presenting data in a way that is legible and useful for your audience. While there's a lot of information out there on the subject, we're just going to be covering the most important best practices in data visualization, highlighting key information, picking the right chart, labeling properly, and making data actionable. Similar to my own excerpt, each of my colleagues will be providing different excerpts from different contexts to showcase just how universally critical and applicable good data visualization is. And for our first best practice, I'll hand it off to Mark.
Thanks, Mason. I'm Mark, and I'll be talking to you today about highlighting our data and conveying that to our audience. First, I'd like to run you through a bad example of how we don't want to do this, and secondly, I'll run you through a good slide. So first off, I'd like you to look at this chart on the right. It shows 6% CapEx growth in the oil and gas industry projected over the next several years. You glance up to the title, and you can't really understand the link between the chart and what the title is trying to say. You look at the right of the slide, and you'll see a wall of text. All of these points don't really have anything to do with what the chart's saying, and you can't really tell the title and the points on the right apart. 2, I'd like you to look again at the chart on the right. You'll see it has 6% CapEx growth, just as the same as the slide before. And the title directly says that. We're going straight to our audience with our main point and distilling the data down into one key message. You look on the right, and you'll see 2 points, brief context around the chart title. This is the way we want to get to our audience. We want to eliminate extraneous information. We want to convey a clear message. And now I'll pass it to Aman to go over picking the right charts.
Thank you so much, Mark. Before I talk about picking the right chart for your audience, I would like to highlight why we are talking about this. So whenever you're looking at picking any chart for your data, you should have 2 things in mind. First, what is it that you want to represent? What is the message that you want to send to your audience? And second, how knowledgeable is your audience about the topic? Right? So with these things in mind, I'll take you over to my first example. This is from Fox News, and I have nothing against them. You look at this chart, it says, what happens if the tax cuts expire. It shows a huge bump, and when you look at the data, and you get shocked. But in reality, it could have been represented like this. If you had used the full axis, it's a 4% growth, which is big, but not as huge as in the first chart. So what it shows is, if you use the full axis, 1, you can avoid distortion, and 2, you can avoid misrepresenting, which is important. On to my second example. I've looked at this data multiple times, and I've been practicing this for 2 weeks now, and I still can't comprehend what's happening there. This is a stacked chart. There's a lot of text. There's a lot of data on the left. There is years on the x-axis. If you put this up in a presentation, I can assure you it will take 2 minutes for the audience just to understand what's happening here. And even then, they won't be able to. However, if your chart looked like this is a line chart. It's easy to understand. It shows you the data which you want to hit home, and the audience can absorb this in 15 seconds and move to you, the speaker. With these things in mind, I would like to hand it over to Saryu to talk about how to properly label so that the audience can understand your data. Thank you.
Thank you, Aman. I appreciate the intro. I'd like to take a bit of a deeper dive into some of the graphs that we looked at and some of the ways that I think that you could properly label the graphs and make it easier for the next user to understand and parse through the information that you're trying to convey. If we look at the illustration on the left, it's overcrowded with data. We have data sets conveying acronyms of each of the countries that are represented, and so it's really difficult at first blush to figure out what exactly you're trying to extract from this data. Contrastingly, on the right, I feel like this is a better way to represent the data in that you only have 4 countries that are being highlighted here in terms of the names of the countries as well as the color, so you can quickly ascertain and parse through the information that's being presented your way. An even better example, in my opinion, is this line graph. The beginning and ending values of this information highlight the fact that we're anticipating growth and anticipates the progress that we expect to see over the next 35 years or so. Another attribute that I think that we should focus on is the colors that are being utilized here. The legends indicate what the colors specify, which is progress, regression, as well as what the target is, and I think that the colors are spot on in terms of figuring out and displaying that type of information, which makes it really easy for the user to figure out what's happening in this particular scenario. And next, I'd like to pass it off to Kelly to bring it home.
Thanks, Ayu. So my teammates have really walked us through some of the mechanics of ensuring that the data that you present is clear and easy for your audience to understand. And I'm going to bring this home with a best practice about bringing your point home for your audience, which is really that if you've spent all of this time collecting data, building a presentation, asking time from your audience to present the data, you really want to be showing them something that will inform some kind of action after the fact. And so my best practice is around making your data actionable. So when I was working with the C-suite of an organization, this was a common type of information that they would receive. This is Q12 results, which is a very common measure of staff engagement across many organizations. And what's nice about this graph, highlighting some of the things that my teammates have said, it's very easy at first glance to see what the presenter is trying to have you understand because it's color-coded, and so the red items are really supposed to draw your attention. But the reason that this is a non-example is because the action here is implicit. So if you're bringing this information to leadership of an organization, for example, the reason you're doing so is likely because you want them to do something as a result of it. But the words here really just restate what the problem is. It doesn't give any kind of clear action steps about what you can do as a result of seeing the information. In contrast, this example gives some very clear suggestions for action items to address the issues that are shown in the graph. This is important because even if the leadership doesn't choose to follow the specific examples you've given, it is a good jumping off point for them to have a conversation about what actions make the most sense in the given situation. So rather than providing information and just basically raising a problem with no solutions, by providing action steps, you're really being solutions oriented, which makes for a much more effective presentation. So in summary, we've gone through some of the most important best practices for making sure that the data that you show in your presentation is effective and easily understood by the audience. Those best practices, again, are highlighting key information, making the right choice of chart, labeling properly, and making your data actionable for your audience. Thank you so much.